Ladies and gentlemen, when the ancient world spoke of gods, it did not merely decorate the sky with stories, it gave names to the powers that still move within us. We imagine they vanished with Olympus, yet they did not retire. They descended into the corridors of the soul, where they trouble our sleep, organize our loves and hatreds, and sometimes erupt in collective passions that seize whole nations. To take them as only myths is the modern superstition. What we do not honor inwardly returns as fate. When one speaks of the gods, the modern ear imagines superstition, mythology, or at best poetic metaphor. Yet these ancient figures are not relics of a dead past. They are living forces, expressions of those primordial patterns that have always shaped human life. The mistake of the rational age was to believe that, by removing them from our cosmologies, we had freed ourselves from their influence. In truth, what was once worshipped in temples did not vanish. It descended into the inner world, into the depths of Psyche, where it continues to direct, to disturb, and to create. Consider the experience of overwhelming love or the sudden eruption of destructive rage. These moments are not produced by the ego, which prefers moderation and control. They arrive unbidden, seize us like storms, and bend our lives to their will. To the ancients, such eruptions bore divine names. Today we may speak of them in terms of archetypes or complexes, but the reality is the same. A greater power has broken into the small order of the conscious personality. We may dismiss it as chemistry, as instinct, as accident, yet the intensity of the experience resists such reduction. Something in us knows it is encountering the sacred, whether through beauty, terror, or irresistible compulsion. When these powers are recognized consciously, they can be related to as presences, as images that guide and enlarge the soul. Love becomes not merely desire, but a path of transformation. Anger becomes not mere destruction, but a force for clarity and boundary. Wisdom, imagination, fertility, death, all the ancient domains of the gods, reveal themselves again in the dramas of personal existence. To engage them consciously is to allow life to unfold with depth and meaning, rather than be ruled blindly by impulses that seem alien or irrational. But when we deny their reality, when we insist that nothing larger than ego exists, the situation turns dangerous. For what is repressed does not disappear, it acts from the shadows. The denied God returns as obsession, as neurosis, as fanaticism. Entire societies may fall under the sway of archetypal powers that have been left unacknowledged, erupting in mass movements, wars, and ideologies that grip individuals with the fervor once reserved for religion. In such cases, people imagine themselves free agents, yet they are carried by currents stronger than reason. It is, therefore, not belief that is required, but recognition. To know that one's emotions, one's longings, one's fears are not merely private disturbances but expressions of something universal, something ancient, is to step into relation with the deeper strata of existence. Symbols, myths, and dreams offer the language through which these forces communicate. They appear not to decorate the mind, but to announce the presence of a God in the soul. Thus, the work of consciousness is not to banish these realities, but to enter into dialogue with them. To give each its place, to hear its voice, and to integrate its power into the pattern of a life. For only then can one live not as a puppet of unconscious forces, but as a participant in the eternal drama that has always bound human beings to the mysteries of the cosmos. There are certain experiences that overwhelm the boundaries of the ordinary self. They arrive without invitation, as if a door suddenly opens in the familiar world, and one is confronted with a presence both strange and intimate. Such moments cannot be manufactured by will, nor dismissed by reason. They carry an unmistakable charge, a sense of awe that is at once terrifying and fascinating. In their presence the ego feels small, exposed, and yet strangely exalted, as though touched by something eternal. These experiences are not luxuries of the few, nor the inventions of poets or mystics alone. They belong to the very structure of the human soul. Every individual, at some point, is seized by a force that cannot be explained away as accident or mere suggestion. It may appear in the sudden beauty of nature, when the sight of a mountain, a storm, or the sea evokes a shudder that is not only delight but fear. It may come in dreams, where an image or figure radiates such intensity that it alters the course of life. It may strike in crisis, in illness, or in an encounter with death, when all familiar securities collapse and one is confronted with the unknown. At such times, the ego discovers its limits. The tidy categories of thought, the careful order of daily existence, prove inadequate before this influx of otherness. And yet it is precisely this shattering of the ordinary frame that gives rise to meaning. For in the grip of such experience, one senses that life is not random or trivial, but charged with significance. A new orientation appears, not derived from rational calculation, but given, as if from beyond. The individual feels addressed, summoned, compelled to re-evaluate and to change. The danger is to flee from such moments, to reduce them to pathology, or to disguise them under theories that strip them of their weight. To explain away the shudder of awe as mere chemistry, or the vision of a dream as only fantasy, is to rob the soul of its deepest nourishment, for these experiences, however disruptive, carry the seed of transformation. They tear down, but they also build anew. They disturb, but in disturbing they awaken. Meaning does not come from the ego inventing fictions to comfort itself. Meaning arises when the individual collides with the depths, when the small circle of consciousness is pierced by the larger reality of the psyche. This is why such experiences leave indelible marks. They reconfigure values, reshape destiny, and demand response. One cannot simply return to life as it was before. Something greater has spoken, and the only question is whether one will listen. Thus, the numinous is not an ornament of religion or an illusion of weakness. It is the eruption of the deeper order into personal life. To accept it is to allow the soul to recognize its kinship with something beyond the grasp of intellect, something infinite, and in that recognition, life ceases to be mere survival or accident. It becomes a journey, a drama suffused with meaning. There is in each person a deep longing for wholeness, though it is seldom recognized at first. One imagines that life is about adaptation to circumstance, the pursuit of success, or the maintenance of comfort. Yet beneath these provisional aims stirs another impulse, more mysterious and inexorable, the drive toward becoming who one truly is. This movement does not lead toward perfection, as if one could polish away every fault, but toward the integration of what has long been hidden, rejected, or feared. The first encounter on this path is with the shadow. It is not difficult to condemn what we recognize as evil in others, but far harder to admit the same tendencies in ourselves. We prefer to believe that cruelty, envy, cowardice, and deceit belong elsewhere, not within our own being. Yet the soul insists otherwise. Dreams, projections, and conflicts continually return us to the fact that what is unconscious in us does not vanish. It waits to be seen. To confront the shadow is painful, for it requires humility and often shame. But without this step, no genuine growth is possible. The one who denies his shadow becomes its servant. Beyond this threshold lies the encounter with the inner other, appearing in symbolic forms of anima or animus. This figure draws us beyond the narrow confines of rational control into the depths of imagination, relationship, and eros. It fascinates and unsettles, opening a dialogue with those dimensions of the psyche that speak in images and intuitions rather than in logic. Through this confrontation, one discovers the necessity of balancing opposites, masculine and feminine, reason and feeling, outer life and inner life. These are not contradictions to be erased, but polarities to be lived. If the journey continues, there emerges the hint of a deeper center. It is not identical with the ego, though it seeks to include the ego in its orbit. It is as if one encounters an ordering principle that has been quietly at work all along, arranging events, shaping dreams, directing longings. This center cannot be possessed or commanded. It can only be approached with reverence. To draw near is to experience both expansion and humility, for one realizes that the individual life participates in a pattern larger than itself. The task of individuation, then, is a dialogue between this greater center and the conscious personality. It is a slow weaving together of fragments into a living whole. The conflicts and oppositions of life do not vanish. They are gathered into a broader unity in which each has its place. Outwardly, nothing may appear extraordinary, yet inwardly there is a new solidity, a sense of being rooted in something timeless. Such a life does not escape suffering. Indeed, suffering often deepens as awareness grows. But it is no longer meaningless. To live in relation to the deeper center is to find orientation even in darkness, and to recognize that one's destiny is not random, but part of the unfolding of the soul. This is the quiet goal toward which the journey points, to become whole, to be oneself, and in so doing, to serve the mystery that has always sought to live through us. The image of the divine has never been fixed, though many would like to believe so. Across history it has shifted, deepened, and fractured, following the slow evolution of human consciousness. What the ancients saw in the sky or in the fertility of the earth was not illusion. It was their way of giving form to the presence that stirred within and around them. Later, the divine was imagined as a sovereign ruler, enthroned above creation, demanding obedience and offering protection. Each transformation of this image reflected not the death of the sacred, but the changing capacity of humanity to perceive and to bear it. In earlier epochs, the gods were many, each governing a sphere of life. Such multiplicity mirrored the fragmented awareness of the human psyche, where love, rage, fertility, and death seemed to belong to distinct powers. As consciousness matured, there arose the impulse to unify, to see behind the many faces a single principle. Monotheism was born of this striving for unity, and with it the profound tension between the transcendent and the personal. The divine became both infinite mystery and intimate father, a paradox that shaped the inner and outer worlds of countless generations. Yet as humanity pressed further into the light of reason, this image was subjected to new pressures. The sovereign ruler became for some a tyrant to be overthrown, for others a distant abstraction. The dark aspects, once acknowledged in myth, were forced into shadow. Evil, suffering, and contradiction were denied place in the God image, as though human consciousness could endure only the radiance of goodness and none of the ambivalence inherent in the whole. But what is excluded above returns below. The devil, chaos, and cruelty took their places in human projections, in collective violence, and in personal torment. The task of the present age is to wrestle honestly with this split. To imagine the divine only as light and purity is to distort the truth of existence. Every soul knows that darkness belongs as much to life as light, that destruction is bound with creation, that suffering is inseparable from joy. A more complete image must emerge, one that holds the opposites without dissolving them into false harmony. Such an image does not comfort in the old way, it unsettles, for it demands that we confront our complicity in the world's pain as well as its beauty. This evolving image is not imposed from without, but arises within, through dreams, visions, and the quiet work of reflection. It is shaped by our struggles, our discoveries, our willingness to endure the tension of contradiction. To relate consciously to it is to accept that the divine is not finished, that revelation continues as long as humanity grows in awareness. Thus, every individual bears a portion of responsibility for how the sacred is seen and lived. In this sense, the transformation of the God image is the transformation of the human soul itself. As consciousness expands, so too does the face of the eternal. To live in dialogue with this evolving image is to recognize that the mystery cannot be captured once for all time, but reveals itself in ever new forms, calling us to deeper wholeness and to a truth that will never be exhausted. I began by saying the gods have not left us. Let me end with the reason they cannot. They are the grammar of our depths. To make peace with them is to make peace with life itself. May each of you find the courage to descend, to listen, and to bring back a wiser heart. Then the city will change, not by decree, but because its citizens carry within them the soul of the gods. Thank you.